It's another good day to lose to Joe Revere, baby. That's honestly one of the things that I love the most about playing in Denver, because this is just a small little beach here, and there is a good amount of competition. Game time, baby. Let's go. All right, so we're just gonna dive right in. Starting on hole number 2, since this is a shotgun start because we're playing 2 rounds in the same day. First round will be today, and then second round will be coming at you tomorrow. This hole is only 230 feet, but like I talked about in my practice round that I posted yesterday, I'm throwing a 9-speed at it. It's a Firebird because I know I can just flex it through the gap pretty comfortably, and it leaves us with a putt inside the circle to start the round. These are always good ones to start because it's not too close, not too far, probably in the 20 to 25 foot range. Luckily able to put it in, and that adds a lot of confidence, and we're 1 down through 1. If you guys have been following the channel, you'll know that my goals are now to win my first MPO tournament. And one of the things that I like about having that goal here is, as I said earlier, there's so much good competition. 5,000 plus rated players.
Go in. Oh!
A nice little ace with my flat top Firebird definitely would have helped with that on hole number 3. Leaves us with another kind of tester putt to get started with our round. But the biggest competition of them all is Joe Revere, the 2 times reigning Masters World Champion, 1032 rated, and basically eats these Colorado tournaments alive. Solid putt, left it a little high and left, and that's going to be something that you see a lot today because going into this round, my body is very tired. I did not over prepare for the tournament, but I definitely overdid it for the last couple of videos that I brought to you guys on how to prepare for a tournament. I made the final mistake of overdoing it. So my right knee has a little bit of a twing in it, and my hand is not really extending all the way. And the first thing to go when your hands and elbow aren't feeling good is the putt, unfortunately. So I'm really having to focus in on that. Hole 3 is a 400-foot hole that I just throw a big hyzer a little bit low on, which is a nice one to miss that because now I know I can correct and throw it a little bit higher. Death putt, so I just pitch it up, and we are 2 through 3 dropping in our par. Hole 5 is one of the more difficult holes on the course. It's only 636 feet as a par 4, but it's a really tricky landing zone off the tee. It should just be a routine hyzer, but because you have this baseball field that you want to throw just behind, you kind of are tempted to do what I just did and leave it a little bit wide right. I meant to throw it over that tree that it went around, and it was in the out of bounds, so I'm going to be throwing 3 from here, trying to get up and down to save par in a pretty skinny landing zone across the water. I decided to throw my Honor instead of my Firebird, and didn't really account for the fact that I was running down a hill, and that was going to drag me a little bit towards a leftward tilt. Turned it over way too much and ended up throwing it OB as well. And so now I have to pitch up to try to save a 6, a double bogey. I throw my zone up pretty close to the landing zone, but I've been kind of laying up everything a little bit too short. Everything is just outside the bullseye. You can see Josh right in front of me trying to get his camera time. I don't know why I'm skipping to the basket, but we're moving on to hole 6, which is the double Mando hole, trying to bounce back after the double. I talked about this a little bit in my practice round, but there's a couple ways that you can attack this hole. The double Mando is a little bit big, and I prefer throwing this forehand with a little bit of anhyzer out of the hand so that it will fight through the Mando right to left and then drop down close to the basket. And because I threw a Firebird, it's pretty overstable, and unless I really burn it over, it's not going to go OB left. You could also throw a backhand, which a lot of people do, but it leaves me with this outside the circle putt, and here we're really going to be able to see what is happening when my elbow and my hand are a little too fatigued because I'm not able to pop my bottom fingers out and get a good spin on the disc. So even though it was on line for the majority of the putt, it just dumped out left super fast because there was no spin on it. Hole 7 is a 325-foot par 3, and as I'm throwing a hyzer with my Honor, I do want to say that I'm not trying to give an excuse as to why I'm missing the putts. I am absolutely missing the putts that I should be making, but honestly in the moment it's not computing to me that I'm putting less spin on the disc, and to try to use other things like a little bit more wrist, even a little bit higher and righter of a putt to compensate for that, which I absolutely should have done today.
Yeah, it's true. No.
Hey, which goose do you want me to hit?
None of them. The one dead. All of them. Dead center.
You take the one on the far left that's lagging. I'll give you 5 bucks.
Now, luckily, that goose was the perfect aiming point because there's a double Mando on hole 8. It's a pretty short par 4, but you do have to negotiate that double Mando, and there's an OB to the left of it. The farthest goose was 429. And even though I didn't hit it,
Just looked at it.
that's honestly a perfect shot. I would take that every single time. Just leaves me a little pitch up with my Kevin Kiefer Retro Pure, which I'm able to put underneath the basket for another tap-in birdie. Maybe we should call it a goose on this hole, I guess. Now this is going to move us into one of my favorite parts of the course, with a par 4 followed by a par 5 and then an island hole. Hole 9 here is 640-ish feet, and I decided to throw this big hyzer around this tree. There was no Mando, and most people are throwing it up the gut. I leave it a little wider than I wanted, and I was a little scared that it wasn't going to come back in bounds, but the disc was just overstable and gliding enough to do so, leaving me 385 feet into the pin. I'm going to throw that same exact destroyer and leave it on what, out of my hand, I felt like was the perfect line, but people were calling for it to get more and more left. Luckily, I end up pretty much parked. That's a benefit of knowing your own discs, and we take another birdie, which I think is a turkey at this point, after getting back to even through 4 holes with the double bogey. So I'm feeling really good about my bounce back and knowing that moving into hole 10, which is my 9th hole of the day, I can get to 4 down through 9, which feels like a relatively good pace to be on. Hole 10 is the only par 5 on the course, and maybe the only par 5 in Denver at the moment. There's a Mando left of that rightmost tree down there, and leaving my hand, I thought that I put my destroyer just flat enough that it was going to get around the Mando on the opposite side. Luckily, it barely sneaks through, and it leaves me with a pretty routine hyzer to throw as my second shot. There really isn't too much to say about the second shot. Even though the hole is 960 feet, at the MPO level, if you can get through that Mando, you basically have about 550 feet left to make happen in 2 different shots. So I pitch a hyzer with a pretty overstable destroyer just to not flirt at all with the right side OB.
Look how it disappeared.
And then I pitch up a zone, my Crystal Flex one, because I didn't want a lot of ground action. And I just left it a little bit short. Again, that's been my problem, and it leaves me with a relatively scary 20 to 25 foot putt, especially knowing that my putting has not been phenomenal right now.
I know that guy. I know that guy.
Big sigh of relief, because I know that that's a hole that if you want to win the tournament or even come close, you're going to need to birdie both times. And it moves us into an island hole where I pitch a forehand with my Firebird, and once again I throw it a little bit short. I've noticed this a lot during my tournament rounds. I tend to tense up a little bit, and that leads me to throw things a little bit short, but I also don't want to juice them too much, so I throw them a little bit short, and it leaves me with a longer putt than I'd like on a relatively simple 270 foot island hole. Which, unfortunately, I just splash out the right side. I definitely missed it right because I was really focusing on giving it enough pop and juice, but I just feel like so much is slightly off for me right now. Hole 12 is 250 feet, and it's a tempo that they put in with the Mando left of the first tree. The intended line just seems to be either a turnover or forehand up that left side gut, but I just like to throw over everything, take it all out of play with the very overstable Firebird. And it leaves me with a really easy cleanup for my birdie.
Oh my god!
That was crazy.
That was nasty. Straight hit pole and bounce.
I mean, I don't really know what you could say to that. I'm not one to call much spit outs, but that definitely feels like a spit out because I watched it split the chains, hit the pole, and bounce straight back out.
I can't make a better putt than that. Okay, on to the next. Okay, on to the next.
That's really the mentality that I have to have, and definitely something I'm wanting to adopt in even more situations where good and bad does happen. 350 feet, slightly downhill over a big water carry to a basket that is just so precariously placed right on the edge. I throw my overstable destroyer, make sure to give it enough height, because if I throw it low, it's probably in the water. Unfortunately, it winds up about 40 feet to the left of the basket, but I want my revenge on these things. I was going back and forth in my head of lay it up versus run it versus lay it up versus run it, and I had to decide basically a half second before I started my downswing of my putt. I'm running this putt. Luckily was able to cash it. It feels like a bounce back even though I took a par on the last hole, but it moves into hole 14, wanting to birdie everything here on out to give myself a good chance at being potentially in the win for the tournament. During practice, I threw a lot of shots on this hole, and I was really liking this slight hyzer flip with the pure. I put it on too much hyzer and early reset a little bit too much, but Josh and I had said that we wanted to birdie everything out, so
Let's go around again, Anthony. Let's do it.
and that's why he's laughing as I basically shank this shot and leave myself outside the circle again. But I just made a really good one of these putts, so I'm hoping to get it up again.
Oh man, don't miss it like a baby.
Outside, inside.
But I have to make this for the comebacker. And watching all this back, I realized something about my putt that could absolutely help as I learn to really finalize and practice a solid putting stroke. I've been wondering for a while why my putting has not felt super consistent as I've been in this more inline stance. I do think a part of it is over fatigue. I'm really relying a lot on finger pop, and honestly, I haven't spent as much time practicing as I need to. But you can't just practice throwing the disc in the basket. Well, I guess you can. That's a lot of what putting practice is. But if you really want to get good at having a consistent putting stroke, you probably should be looking back at your putting form, which is something that I've totally neglected to do, but I've heard a lot of pros talk about doing in the off season as they work on their putt. I just like, I'm already filming my form work. Why do I have to do that for the putt too? Luckily, I played this tournament and watched this back. because what I'm able to see here is a lot of what my lead leg is doing. I think a lot about my back leg, especially as I'm thinking about driving power from the back leg, and you can see it is bent and being used in all of these putts. But the most confident looking putt I've felt so far has been that one from the hill. And that's really one of the only putts of the whole round where my front leg also has had a bend in it. I was listening to a podcast with Corey Ellis. I believe it was on Ultiworld, and he was talking about when he teaches putting, he always talks about bending the legs. And I was like, oh good, I do bend the legs. But I was only thinking about my back leg. Because if you watch all these putts, especially the ones that I missed, the front leg, it starts bent and then it straightens out and then it doesn't re-bend, and that just it's not fluid. It seems like it's hindering a little bit of the power going into my putt. I just acting like I don't really know what it's doing, but I definitely notice that when I go down and I'm able to bend both my legs, and I noticed this while watching Cora Dallin today. He was playing at Ledgestone, no spoilers here, but he was playing and all of his putts had both legs having the knees bent. Calvin doesn't. Corey Ellis talked about that being a little bit of an outlier, but I'm definitely going to start trying to watch back footage of me putting, which sounds so lame, but I think it's going to be so helpful, even though it sounds so lame to do, to really dial in getting both of my legs bending at the same time, because with that power comes a little bit of pop and spin, and I'm probably not going to be missing a lot of these putts out the left side like I already have, or maybe like I will do the rest of this round. Definitely not. I make all the rest of my putts for sure.
I think it's perfect, yeah.
Not gonna lie, I do not remember why I was so sad at a perfect drive on hole 15. This is an interesting little par 4, not super far. It is attackable for eagle. It's only 560 feet if you got a really big arm, like maybe me in like 12 months, I don't know. But for now, I just throw my hyzer with my destroyer in between the two islands and then pitch up a zone, which again, I just leave ever so slightly short with another 20 to 25 foot putt, which is a little scary right now. There is a little bit more of a rebend, as you were able to see there before that putt goes in. Pretty happy to make that, because again, those 20 to 25 footers are feeling extra scary for me right now. Hole 16 is pretty tricky. It's a big forehand where OB narrows around a green pretty significantly up by the basket. There is a headwind with a little bit of left to right, so I take my EchoStar Destroyer thinking it'll flip a little bit. But when you throw a hyzer slightly nose up, you might get decent distance, but it's definitely going to go OB on you. And so I have an inside the circle putt to save my par. Leak that one out left side as well. And of course, not all of it is a form thing. A lot of it is a commitment and a mental thing, but it's just not clicking right now. But I go to hole 17 thinking I really need to go 3 for 3 to feel confident about shooting a 1,000 rated round, because as a lot of you guys know, I am trying to get to be 1,000 rated like most disc golfers who play tournaments. And I felt like probably 7 or 8 would be around that 1,000 mark. And so to confidently get there, I really wanted to shoot 8 down. This is a really cool hole where you go between the baseball fields and you need to throw a placement hyzer as your first shot. I give up my Firebird for the honor because I wanted that little bit of extra glide as I'm getting a little bit more tired in the round. Unfortunately, I misrelease it a little bit inside, but it just barely stays in bounds, and it leaves me with a pretty straight tunnel shot where I can either go big hyzer over the fence, or I can just try to throw it straight up the middle between the fences. There is a little bit of wind, and so if you keep your disc a little bit lower, it won't be affected as much. And I'm trying to decide which disc to throw, and I land on my Opto Pure, where if I throw it slightly on hyzer, it's going to flip up slightly, drift maybe a tiny amount, but definitely get a little bit of finish as well.
All you need to do is take all your discs.
And I put it basically inside the bullseye of the basket, so I'm able to tap that putt in on these 10 baskets again, regaining a little bit of confidence in them, but still definitely scared because of that spit out that I had. I'm definitely aiming lower than I might need to because I'm very afraid of getting another spit out on these temp veterans. Hole 18 is my second to last hole. It is just under 500 feet as a par 4. You play to this landing zone, or you can go all the way across, but you do have to basically carry the water the whole way. So I just pitch my destroyer on a pure hyzer. I push it a little bit long on my landing zone, so I have to go through these trees instead of having a more open look. And so I want to throw my destroyer on a slight amount of anhyzer.
Behind a tree. That's fine though. Over. Hit the line a little too curly.
Once again, putting on these 10 baskets, but it's another barely outside the bullseye putt. Very disappointed that I put that low. That's just a mental mistake from being afraid of these baskets because of the spit out that I had, not trusting that that's a low percentage thing that happened, and that's going to cause me a stroke, which could cost me that 1,000 rated round. Hole 1 is one of the longer par 4s. It's about 760, maybe 770 feet, and I'm just trying to let loose with a little bit of anger from that putt. I do want to go over these trees instead of through them, so I throw my neutral destroyer on a slight amount of turn. There is a tailwind, so I know it'll stable it out, and it does leave me in a landing zone, which is right in the middle of the two landing zones where I'd like to be. feet. I'd either like to be 50 feet left or right, so it's really not ideal. There is a slight forehand line. I can't really go big hyzer because I'm too close to those trees in front of me, so I need to throw a slight flex into a tailwind with this Table Destroyer. Not quite the easiest shot, even though it is only about 335 feet. And I'm able to put it inside the circle somehow. Very happy with that execution, and now I need to just step up, focus up for one last putt to try to get my 7 down, which could be the 1,000 rated round that I'm looking for.
Let's go, dude. I'm not afraid of these bastards anymore.
Very happy to have finished there. Very happy to have had a phenomenal card.
Almost went 3 for 3. He was a 10-footer for 3 for 3.
Didn't record anything right after the round because honestly I was so hungry I needed to go eat, and my body was getting tired, which might be a factor in tomorrow's video, which will be round 2. This round, luckily right now, unofficially is exactly 1,000 rated. So I guess this is what an exactly 1,000 rated round looks like. Definitely a lot of room for improvement. Probably, I mean, a spit out, 3 or 4 missed circle 1 putts, I think. Easily probably could have been 10 or 11 down, especially since I doubled what should be a relatively simple 4. Hopefully we can clean that up for the next round because I am in 4th place at the moment. 5 strokes behind Joe Revere, who shot 12 down, which all 5 of those I could have made up during this round. But that'll be coming at you guys tomorrow. If you want to check out my practice round or how I prepare for a tournament, definitely do those things. Just don't do them in the same like 24-hour time span like I did because I made videos about them, because you might burn yourself out before a tournament and then not know how to open your hand up on putts. This mustache is averaging like 1,000.5 rated right now because I averaged 1,001 at Casey Wide Open and then 1,000 here. So 1,000 rated mustache, baby. Get you some. Peace.